Before we begin, subscribe and tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. Tonight, a sick black maid will be locked outside in a snowstorm by the woman planning to marry a billionaire, and when he finally comes home, one frozen set of footprints will expose a cruelty far worse than anyone inside the mansion understood. Stay outside until every window is clean. Camille Laurent spoke through the glass door without opening it. On the other side, Naomi Carter stood ankle-deep in snow, one hand gripping a cleaning cloth and the other pressed against her ribs. Fever burned behind her eyes, but the wind slicing across the Ashbourne estate made her body shake violently. "Miss Laurent," Naomi said, "I told you this morning that I'm sick. I need to go home." Camille glanced at the guests drinking champagne beside the fireplace. "You asked to leave during my engagement weekend." "I asked because I can barely breathe." "You were breathing well enough to argue." Naomi looked toward the driveway. Snow had already covered the tire tracks leading to the mansion. The nearest staff cottage was almost half a mile away. "Please unlock the door." Camille smiled. "Finish the windows first." Then she turned the key and walked away. Naomi had worked at Ashbourne House for only 6 weeks. She was 32, quiet, dependable, and careful never to complain. Naomi needed the job. Her aunt's rent had risen twice that year, and missing even one paycheck could leave them without heat. But necessity had never taught Naomi to mistake cruelty for authority or silence for professional loyalty. People trusted Naomi. And Camille wanted every person in the mansion to trust only her. The billionaire owner, Grant Ashbourne, had been in Chicago for 4 days negotiating the rescue of a failing medical supply company. Camille had doubled everyone's workload instead. That afternoon, Naomi had collapsed briefly in the pantry. The cook found her sitting against the wall, struggling to catch her breath. "You need a doctor," Mrs. Bennet said. Camille overheard. "She needs discipline." Instead, Camille handed her a bucket and ordered her to clean the outer windows before the photographers arrived. Now the photographers had gone. The guests were warm. And Naomi remained outside. She dragged the cloth across another pane. Her fingers had become too numb to hold it properly. Inside, Camille laughed with a senator's wife. Then a guest noticed Naomi through the glass. "Is that woman working outside?" Camille did not look back. She insisted. "Some employees enjoy making a performance of sacrifice." Naomi heard none of it. Her knees were weakening. She reached the final window near the library and saw something unusual through the frost, a small oxygen concentrator hidden beneath a side table, its hose running behind a velvet curtain. Grant's mother had used oxygen before her death. The machine should not have been there. Naomi wiped the glass with her sleeve. Beside it sat a box of sealed respiratory filters marked with the logo of Northstar Medical, the same failing company Grant was trying to purchase. One filter had been cut open. Black dust covered the table. Naomi stared at it. 2 weeks earlier, 3 housekeepers had developed severe coughing after cleaning the library. Camille had blamed mold and dismissed them without references. Naomi's own fever had begun after she was assigned to the same room. She pressed her face closer to the window. A portable air testing device blinked behind the curtain. The red warning light was active. The library air was contaminated. Naomi struck the glass. No one heard over the music. She hit it again. Camille finally turned. Their eyes met through the window. Naomi pointed toward the black dust and then toward the guests. Camille's expression changed. Not confusion. Recognition. She crossed the room and pulled the curtain closed. Then she lowered every blind along the library wall. Naomi understood. Camille knew what was inside. She staggered toward the main entrance and pounded on the locked door. "Let me in. Get everyone out of the library." Camille appeared in the foyer, still holding her champagne glass. "You are embarrassing yourself. The filters are leaking something. Go back to work. People could get sick." Camille stepped closer to the glass. "You already are sick. That makes you the perfect explanation." Naomi froze. Camille continued softly, knowing the door kept anyone else from hearing. "By tomorrow, the guests will remember a feverish maid coughing through the house. If anyone becomes ill, no one will blame the building. You knew. I know you should have stayed invisible. Naomi's breathing tightened. Camille lifted her phone. Turn off the exterior lights. Keep the side gates locked. Darkness swallowed the terrace. Snow fell harder. Naomi moved away from the door, searching for another entrance. She reached the service courtyard, but the gate had been chained from inside. Her legs gave way beside the stone fountain. At that moment, headlights appeared beyond the trees. A black sedan forced its way through the half-closed gates and stopped near the mansion. Grant Ashbourne stepped out without a coat. He had returned 12 hours early after discovering that North Star Medical had falsified safety reports involving defective respiratory filters. He saw the darkened mansion, the locked service gate, and a cleaning bucket half buried in snow. Then he saw Naomi lying near the fountain. Grant ran toward her. Camille opened the front door behind him. Grant, thank God. She has been behaving irrationally all evening. He knelt and touched Naomi's face. Her skin was burning despite the snow covering her uniform. Why was she outside? Camille hesitated. She refused to come in. Naomi's eyes opened weakly. Grant leaned closer. What happened? With the last of her strength, she grabbed his sleeve. Don't let them breathe in the library. Behind Camille, the mansion's alarm suddenly rang. But instead of smoke, black dust poured from the library vents. And every guest inside began to cough. Panic swept through Ashbourne House. Guests stumbled from the library coughing into napkins while black particles drifted through the warm air like ash. Grant lifted Naomi from the snow and carried her toward the front steps. Do not bring her inside. Camille shouted. She could be contagious. Grant stopped and looked at her. She warned us before the alarm sounded. She has a fever. And you left her outside in a blizzard. Camille's face tightened. She refused to follow instructions. Grant turned to the head of security. Call emergency services, evacuate the mansion, and seal the library ventilation. The security chief, Owen Price, hesitated. The system is controlled from the maintenance room. Then shut it down. Owen glanced toward Camille before moving. Grant noticed. He carried Naomi into the glass conservatory, the only room connected to an independent air system. Mrs. Bennet wrapped her in blankets while Grant removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. Naomi struggled to sit upright. The filters, she whispered. North Star labels. I know, Grant said. Their factories have been selling defective respiratory equipment. She looked toward the mansion. It is more than defective. Grant waited. The dust was already inside the library before the alarm. Someone cut open the filters. Camille entered the conservatory. You are confused from the fever. Naomi looked directly at her. You closed the curtain when I pointed at them. I closed it because you were frightening the guests. You told me I would be blamed if they became sick. Grant slowly stood. Did you say that? Camille laughed nervously. She is repeating nonsense. Mrs. Bennet stepped forward. I heard Miss Laurent order the exterior lights turned off. Camille's gaze snapped toward the cook. You were in the kitchen. The kitchen intercom was open. 2 other employees confirmed it. Grant looked through the glass at the guests being escorted outside. Several were already receiving oxygen from paramedics. What was inside those filters? Camille folded her arms. I do not know. Then why did you know the library was dangerous? I didn't. Naomi's hand moved beneath the blanket. She pulled out a small plastic fragment. A corner of the respiratory filter packaging. I found this stuck beneath the outside window. Grant read the printed serial number. North Star Medical Batch 6A119. His expression changed. That batch was never approved for public use. Camille's confidence faltered. Grant had spent 4 days reviewing North Star's records. Batch 6A119 belonged to an experimental filtration system designed for military decontamination rooms. Testing had been stopped after laboratory animals developed lung inflammation and neurological symptoms. Those filters were supposed to be destroyed, he said. Naomi looked at him. Then why were they in your house? Before he could answer, Owen returned. The ventilation controls are not responding. Manual shutdown? Locked. Who has access? Owen hesitated again. Grant stepped closer. Who? Miss Laurent requested a private system override 3 weeks ago. Camille turned on him. That was for the engagement event. You gave her access without notifying me? Grant asked. She said you approved it. I did not. Owen lowered his head. Grant ordered security to take Camille's phone and escort her away from the controls. She backed toward the door. You cannot treat me like a criminal because a maid invented a story. Naomi closed her eyes, too weak to answer. Grant did. She is lying under 3 blankets after you locked her outside. Be careful which person you accuse of inventing cruelty. Owen took Camille's phone. A message appeared before the screen locked. Purge complete. Prepare second release. Grant read it. What second release? Camille went pale. I have never seen that message. The sender was saved under a single letter. Ah. Grant tried calling. The number had already been disconnected. Emergency workers moved the remaining guests toward waiting buses. The black dust continued through the library vents, but nowhere else in the mansion. It is targeted, Naomi said. Grant looked at her. Only the library? She nodded. The guests inside were connected to North Star. He remembered the room's guest list. 3 federal procurement officials. 2 medical regulators. A lawyer representing injured patients. And Grant himself. The engagement dinner had not simply been a celebration. Someone had gathered everyone capable of exposing North Star inside one contaminated room. Camille sank into a chair. I thought the filters would cause coughing. That is all. Grant stared at her. You knew they would be released. She covered her face. My brother said it would create a temporary evacuation and delay your announcement. Your brother? Richard Laurent. Grant knew the name. Richard was North Star Medical's Director of Regulatory Compliance. The executive who had certified the defective filters. He told me your acquisition would expose old testing records, Camille said. He said thousands of workers would lose their jobs. So you let him contaminate my home? He promised no one would be seriously harmed. Naomi looked at the coughing guests beyond the glass. You believed him because the people taking the risk were not you. Camille had no answer. Grant's phone rang. A paramedic reported that one guest had stopped breathing. The lawyer representing North Star's injured workers. Grant ordered the medical team to use the conservatory as a treatment area. Then every light inside the mansion went out. The heating system stopped. Outside, the temperature had fallen below 0. A backup screen activated on the conservatory wall. Richard Laurent appeared from a brightly lit laboratory. Behind him stood rows of sealed respiratory masks. Grant, he said, you should have signed the acquisition agreement without asking questions. Grant moved in front of Naomi. You poisoned my guests. I demonstrated a product failure. You deliberately released a toxic compound. Richard smiled. And now everyone in that house needs the only filters capable of removing it. He lifted a silver mask bearing the North Star logo. Approve the acquisition. Assume responsibility for every past injury claim. Then I will activate the clean air system. Grant looked at the unconscious guests being carried toward the conservatory. And if I refuse? Richard changed the camera angle. A second ventilation chamber appeared. Inside were 12 North Star factory workers restrained in chairs. Naomi recognized one of them. Her aunt, Denise Carter. Richard looked into the camera. You have 40 minutes. Save your guests, save the workers, and perhaps save the maid's family. Naomi tried to stand. Grant caught her before she fell. On the screen, Richard placed his hand over a red ventilation switch. Or let the cold and contaminated air finish what Camille started. The countdown on the conservatory screen began at 39 minutes. Grant held Naomi upright as another coughing guest was carried inside. Paramedics were running out of portable oxygen, and without the mansion's heating system, the glass walls were already turning white with frost. Naomi kept her eyes on her aunt. Denise Carter sat restrained inside Richard's laboratory, her grey hair pressed against the chair and a clear breathing hood locked around her neck. 11 Northstar workers were seated beside her. They were not random hostages. Each had signed a complaint about batch 6A119. "Where is that laboratory?" Grant asked Camille. She shook her head. "My brother has 3 private testing sites. Which one has a ventilation chamber large enough for 12 people? I don't know." Naomi studied the video. Behind Richard, a yellow safety sign reflected in the polished wall. Most of the words were hidden, but she could read the final line. "Level B, marine access only. There's water nearby," she said. Grant looked at the screen. Naomi pointed toward the workers' clothing. Their hair and shoulders were dry, but the floor beneath their chairs was wet. A red life ring hung beside the chamber door. "Marine access," she repeated. "It's probably near the river." Camille slowly lifted her head. "Northstar owns an abandoned vaccine warehouse beside the Hudson Freight Terminal." Grant turned to her. "You said you didn't know." "I didn't know he was using it. My father bought it before he died." "Address." She gave it to Darius through the emergency radio. Police and medical teams were dispatched, but the Hudson Terminal was nearly 40 minutes away in normal weather. They did not have 40 minutes. Richard's voice came through the screen. "Do not waste time trying to find me. The access roads are closed by snow." Grant faced the camera. "You need my signature. That means you still need me alive. I need your company to inherit Northstar's liabilities. Then release the workers first." Richard laughed. "You still think this is a negotiation between equals?" Naomi looked toward the sealed library. Black dust continued pouring from the vents, but the flow weakened every few seconds before returning. "It's cycling," she said. One of the paramedics checked the air monitor. "She's right. The concentration drops every 90 seconds. Grant followed Naomi to the conservatory control panel. Though Richard had disabled the main ventilation system, the independent conservatory circuit still displayed pressure readings from every room. The library vent pressure rose, dropped, then rose again. "There is a physical pump somewhere inside the house," Naomi said. "Richard isn't controlling everything remotely." Camille's face changed. "The wine cellar." "The house," Naomi said. "Richard isn't controlling everything remotely." Camille's face changed. "The wine cellar." Grant turned. "My brother had equipment delivered before the engagement dinner. He said it was refrigeration machinery. You let him install it. I never saw the crates opened. You never wanted to see." Camille accepted the accusation without defending herself. The cellar entrance stood beyond the contaminated library corridor. Firefighters could not enter without functioning masks, and Richard claimed his silver Northstar filters were the only protection. Naomi examined the discarded packaging fragment she had carried from outside. Batch 6A119 was designed to capture industrial chemicals, she said. It became dangerous because the material inside broke down. Grant understood. If the filters are defective, what is protecting Richard? Something newer. The silver mask he displayed was not proof that Northstar alone could save them. It was proof that Richard had already corrected the flaw. Grant looked toward the medical crates visible through the library windows. The working filters could be inside those boxes. Richard had placed his own solution inside the room he contaminated, believing no one would risk entering to retrieve it. Naomi reached for a firefighter's protective coat. Grant stopped her. "You can barely stand. My aunt does not have 30 minutes. You will collapse before you reach the cellar. I know how those packages are labeled. Your team doesn't." Grant removed the coat from her hands and put it on himself. "Then tell me what to find." Naomi stared at him. "You may not come back out. Neither will the people in this house if I do nothing." A firefighter secured a temporary breathing mask over Grant's face. It could protect him for only 4 minutes. Naomi gave him the serial pattern. "Look for silver packaging marked 6B120. Do not touch anything labeled 6A. Grant entered the corridor. The black dust swallowed him almost immediately. Camille stood beside Naomi, watching the man she had planned to marry walk into a contaminated room to correct a danger she had helped create. "I thought becoming his wife would make me untouchable," she whispered. Naomi did not look at her. "You were already untouchable to the staff." That was the problem. Inside the library, Grant found the medical crates beneath the side table. Most contained the defective black filters. One smaller case was secured with a numerical lock. He tried Richard's birthdate. Wrong. Camille's birthday. Wrong. Through the radio, Naomi heard the lock beep. "Ask her what date her brother fears," she said. Camille frowned. "What?" "Not a date he celebrates. A date he remembers." Camille's face went pale. "The North Star Laboratory fire. February 9th. Grant entered 0209. The case opened. Inside were 12 silver replacement filters. The same number as the hostages. Richard had prepared one filter for every worker because he never intended to let Grant's guests use them. He planned to move the surviving complainants after the liability transfer and make them disappear somewhere else. Grant attached one filter to his mask. The air indicator turned green. He filled a service cart with the remaining filters and pushed it back toward the conservatory. Then a section of ceiling collapsed behind him. The pump cycle intensified. Grant disappeared from Naomi's view. "Grant," she shouted into the radio. No answer. Camille moved toward the conservatory door. Naomi grabbed her wrist. "You'll die in there." He went in because of something I helped cause. And dying beside him will not fix it. Naomi took the emergency radio. "Grant, follow my voice. The conservatory door is 20 feet ahead." Static crackled. Then his voice came weakly. "The cart is stuck." 2 firefighters tied safety lines around themselves and entered during the next pressure drop. Seconds later, they dragged Grant and the filter cart into the conservatory. Paramedics fitted the silver filters onto the air treatment equipment. The improvement was immediate. Within minutes, the coughing slowed. The unconscious lawyer began breathing independently. The conservatory temperature remained dangerously low, but the clean air bought them time. Richard watched everything through the screen. His expression had changed. "You opened the silver case." Grant removed the mask. "You never had the only solution." "No. But I still have the people who can prove North Star knew about the defect." The countdown showed 21 minutes. Darius called from the Hudson terminal. "The roads are blocked, but we found a railway maintenance route. We can reach the warehouse in 12 minutes. Richard must have heard the transmission. He pressed the red switch halfway down. Inside the laboratory, vapor entered the workers' breathing hoods. Denise began coughing. Naomi stepped toward the screen. "Stop. Sign the acquisition," Richard said. Grant opened the digital contract Richard had sent. The document did not merely transfer North Star's liabilities. It gave Richard control of Ashbourne Medical Supply after the merger and protected every executive involved in the testing program. Grant could sign and save the hostages temporarily. But Richard would gain the power to bury the evidence permanently. Naomi looked at the workers. "My aunt taught me that surviving injustice is not the same as defeating it." Grant faced her. "What are you saying? If you sign, Richard owns the system that created this. And if I don't, they may die." Camille moved toward the console. "There may be another way." She opened her phone's cloud storage and entered a hidden password. A folder appeared containing North Star board recordings, private safety reports, and photographs of Richard ordering damaged filters relabeled. Grant stared at her. "You had this evidence." "My father gave it to me before he died. He warned me Richard was dangerous." "Why didn't you expose him?" "Because the files also showed my father approved the first human tests. I protected my family name." Naomi looked at the coughing workers. "And your silence gave Richard more victims." Camille's eyes filled. I know. She selected every file and transmitted them to Grant, Darius, federal regulators, and 3 news organizations. Richard saw the upload notification. His composure shattered. You stupid woman. Camille looked directly into the camera. You taught me that reputation mattered more than people. Tonight, I finally learned what that belief costs. Richard slammed the red switch fully down. The workers' chamber filled with vapor. At the same moment, Darius's team reached the warehouse. Gunshots sounded through the live feed. Richard disappeared from the camera. Naomi saw her aunt's head fall forward. Denise. Darius shouted over the radio. The chamber is sealed. Richard has the release control. Grant grabbed Camille's phone. Can you override it? No. The system requires his biometric code. Naomi looked at the screen displaying Richard's abandoned desk. Beside the keyboard sat a small blood testing device. Richard had been monitoring his own exposure. The biometric reader did not require his whole hand. It required a blood sample. And one of the silver filters Grant recovered carried a smear of Richard's blood from when he packed it. Naomi lifted it carefully. Tell Darius to open the emergency scanner, she said. Richard left us exactly what we need to unlock that chamber. Naomi sealed the blood-stained silver filter inside an evidence pouch and handed it to a firefighter. Get this to Darius. The scanner only needs Richard's DNA. The firefighter sprinted toward the waiting helicopter. Grant kept the warehouse feed open while paramedics stabilized the guests inside the freezing conservatory. At the Hudson terminal, Darius pressed the stained filter against the emergency scanner. The chamber doors unlocked. Fresh air flooded the room as officers dragged Denise and the other workers outside. Naomi watched her aunt cough, lift her head, and finally breathe without the hood. Richard tried to escape through the river tunnel, but police found him hiding beneath the loading platform. His phone contained orders to relabel defective filters, silence injured workers, and contaminate Ashbourne House. By sunrise, federal investigators had seized every North Star facility. Camille surrendered the remaining family records and confessed that she had helped arrange the engagement dinner, given Richard access to the mansion, and ignored warnings because she wanted Grant's wealth and her family's reputation protected. Grant ended the engagement immediately. Camille's evidence helped save lives, but it did not erase what she had done. She later pleaded guilty to conspiracy, reckless endangerment, and unlawful detention for locking Naomi outside during the storm. The court ordered her trust fund used to compensate the injured workers and mansion employees. Richard received a life sentence after investigators connected the filter program to several deaths disguised as respiratory failure. Grant refused to hide behind lawyers. He admitted publicly that his company had nearly purchased North Star without listening to workers who had warned about its products. He created an independent medical safety council led by factory employees, nurses, and patient advocates. Naomi accepted the role of director only after the workers elected her. Denise recovered slowly. So did the guests exposed inside the library. Every North Star complainant received treatment, legal support, and compensation. 3 months later, Naomi returned to Ashbourne House during the first snowfall of the new winter. The library had been rebuilt as a worker safety training center. The exterior doors could no longer be locked without triggering an emergency alert. Grant found her beside the same window she had cleaned while feverish. I should have seen what was happening here, he said. You were looking at reports, Naomi replied. Not people. He nodded. You saved everyone in that house. No. I warned them. You finally listened. Grant looked through the glass at Denise speaking with the workers whose lives had been hidden behind North Star's records. That night, Naomi had been treated as disposable because she was sick, poor, and employed to serve others. But when the billionaire came home, he learned the truth powerful people often overlook. The person standing outside in the cold may be the only one brave enough to warn everyone inside. From that day forward, no employee at Ashbourne House was ordered to suffer silently again, and every complaint went directly to an independent counsel that no fiancé, manager, or billionaire could control.